Okay guys, the whole trick with getting these spokes loosened up and adjusted and getting this rust broken free is to soak them with some kind of a WD-40 penetrant oil. This is the Bel-Ray brand stuff that I use here at the shop. But any kind of a loosening penetrating oil and some heat. You heat the nipple up, you let the fluid soak into it, and then you work the wrench back and forth until you get the threads to crack. It's a slow, tedious process. This entire wheel with 36 spokes might take an hour and a half. Spoke kit's 80 bucks. The rim's in good shape. You know, I could throw new spokes and rims at it, powder coat the hub, and be a few $100s into this. Or I could sit here and spend the hour and a half, get all the nipples loosened up, bead blasted, spray paint it, have a total of 2 hours in it, and not spend any money. So that's what I'm up to. Just grab the spoke with the vice grip to clamp it, and then work this one's already loose. And then with that penetrant oil in there and some heat, and you try to, when you heat the nipple, you're making it larger. By making it larger, you're loosening it up off of the spoke. The problem is heat transfers extremely quickly between metal. So what happens is when you heat the nipple, it's only a matter of seconds before the spoke too grows in size. So you have to know how to time it so that you're putting heat on the nipple while the fluid's there ready to soak in, and then in that split moment that you have where the nipple's expanded before the spoke is, trying to break it free and get it to start turning. So it's a bit of a knack. I'm going to film a few minutes of this, see if you can hear the cracks and pings. Oh, that one just cracked all by itself. Look at that. That one didn't even need to be heated. That one was actually okay. That one worked out just fine. Let's see how this one goes. Oh yeah, that one's free. Yeah, to a point. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Hear that, guys? Hear that? Okay, doesn't even want to budge. Feels like it's going to strip the nipple. So take the wrench off, get it hot. Put the flame right on the nipple, guys. Put the flame right on the nipple and try to avoid the spoke. You're trying to expand the nipple while leaving the spoke small. Okay, I got it wiggling. It's just barely wiggling. We'll lube it up again. When you heat it up, you cook all the lube out. So you got to re-lube it. And you just go back and forth, trying to heat it, lube it, work it, heat it, lube it, work it, back and forth, until you get a freed up spoke. Very tedious and time consuming. Go. That's broke loose. That's broke loose pretty good. It's broke loose, and you can actually see the debris floating up out of the threads. You see all those little specks of dirt? That's gunk and goo and rust and corrosion coming up out of those threads. it's been in there for 20 or 30 years. The bike's 30 years old, and you know, if somebody maintained it and rode it for the first 10 years, fine, but it's been at least 20 years since anybody's done anything with these spoke nipples. So, but you can see it is possible to break them loose and to get them freed up and working. You don't automatically have to just cut the spokes out and put new ones in, unless you're worried about cosmetics. You know, if you're worried about cosmetics, that's another animal, because you're never going to get these spokes nice unless you take the time to nickel plate them. You take the time to buy the anodes and the pickle juice and do the process correctly to nickel plate them again. But even then, the threads are damaged from being rusted. You know, all that goo coming up out of those thread nipples, that's damage. That's rust and metal coming out of there. So, for me, I'm not going to spend the time and the money to nickel plate them. And I'm not going to spend the time and money to replace them if I can save them. So I'm just going to do what I'm doing here, break them all loose, get them to where the wheel's safe to ride on, and then once I have a safe usable wheel, I'll just spray paint it to limit the corrosion. And you say, oh, how hokey, how cheap. Well, okay. You know, like we discussed many times, you want to put $3 grand into a $1,000 dirt bike, go ahead. But I'm not. I'm going to get a $1,000 dirt bike up and running for $1,000. Right, Joe? Everything I say? Yeah. Everything 2 says. Oh. All the newness and prettiness, and all the oldness and the ugliness. Look at that. Look at that. New and pretty, old and ugly. New and pretty, old and ugly. Look at this. This poor thing. This poor baby. Is that a fracture or a seam? Nope, that's a mold seam. We're good. So yeah, guys, I got the new spokes in it right there. I loosened all the spokes with heat and penetrating fluid and grabbed them with vice grips and rocked them back and forth and got them all tight. Got the wheel relatively true. It's not perfect. It's got a bend in the aluminum that's not coming out, but it's laced true, but the bend in the rim's not, it's kinked too bad to get it perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and run it like it is. It's close enough for motocross and hare scrambles use. But you can see where the new spokes are. Everything's torqued up and laced and lubed. But this looks just rough. And if you don't get that out of there and paint it, it'll just keep going. It'll just cancer out. So I'm going to go ahead and bead blast this, bead blast the hub. I'm going to leave the old bearings in, just like I did on the front wheel, same process. Leave the old bearings in, bead blast it, then paint it, then change the bearings last. You want to do the bearings last. You don't want to be bead blasting on your bearings, okay? That sand gets in there and just eats it and ruins them. So now we got a good rear end, good swing arm, shock, linkage, and all the back stuff. The front suspension's done, rear suspension's done. We get a back wheel on this thing, then we can roll it around the shop. Okay, we got this back out of the blast cabinet. We blasted this hub down, and you can see where some of this rust is just nasty. I mean, some of this stuff's just never going to come out, so you either replace the rim or live with it. So I'm going to live with it. But you see what I'm doing here? I'm just cleaning this channel where the tire makes its home. Unlike a road race bike or a big old street bike where that's an air seal, this is actually not an air seal on this kind of bike, because it's just a lip for the tire to live. You got a tube sealing the air out from the spoke holes, right? All I need to do is get the tire to fit up and expand out and fully seat onto the rim. See how that rubber's nicely uniformly sticking out right where it's supposed to. If you don't have this lip clean and there's a lot of debris and rust and junk and muck all built up through there, and you don't do what I'm doing here, the tire won't seat properly. It won't fit right, because they designed the bead of that tire to just exactly go around that size. So if you got all this muck, you got to clean it like I'm doing here, and just make it to where the tire has a place to fit. Okay guys, we got our wheel trued, well, broken spokes laced, then trued, then cleaned up, sandblasted. We got the New bearings in. I left the seals out. The seals go in very last because you don't want to spray paint over black plastic seals. That just looks shoddy. So I don't mind if paint gets on the outer bearing shield. You'll never see that, but I don't want paint on my spacer shields and stuff. That's nasty looking. So I got it ready to paint. I put it in this lacing jig to truing jig to spin it. You don't have to do this because it's spray paint. It's not a big deal, but you know, I'm doing this on wet ground instead of dry ground. See that? Wet, dry, wet, dry. I'm doing this on wet ground because the paint won't stick to the concrete. The whole trick is to keep the wheel moving. If you keep it moving, you won't get runs. See how each time I spray, I just move in a little bit more? To do the spokes, you want to get a straight shot on as many of them as you can, so you wouldn't do it out here, because this only sprays this spoke. But if you do it like this, now you're getting a whole waft of them. So when you do your spokes, get it out to the rim like that. Now we're going to do the nipples. How's that look, huh? Look bad, does it? Now, we haven't done the rim yet. We're just working our way out. We're just working our way out. Okay, and we'll go to the other side. Okay. Now, in the process of doing that, what happened to the rim? I evenly coated the whole center section of the rim. See that? Just by doing the spokes, it got on the center section of the rim. Didn't get the lips, so let's do them. There we go, guys. That's a painted wheel. That's a painted wheel. Keep it moving while it's wet if you can. It's hard, but there you go. All right. So that's where all the steel knackered up into the aluminum from the, that's where the most amount of rust was from the B block. All right, so you see that nasty silver there? Now you know why I did it on wet concrete. When that dries up and the sun beats on it and people walk across this, that paint will not stick to that concrete and it'll just come right off with foot traffic. No permanent damage done. You got to take care of your employer and your workspace, your wives, your girlfriends, your landlords. You got to be respectful to the people around you guys. You got to do it. Okay, there we go. Wheel looks a little better now. Let's get a tire and some rim strips and a rim lock on it and get a rotor and a sprocket on that thing and let's keep going. Wear your helmets. Thanks for coming to this Cycle for Life video, guys. We greatly do appreciate it. We're not doing this to make money. This isn't a financial thing. I've got day work, full-time job. But please do like, share, and subscribe and click the notification button because it helps us get this information in front of other people, and you never know, maybe a motorcycle will save their life too. So wear your helmets, and no matter how fast you choose to ride, please ride safe. God bless.